Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast. Almost swallowed my mic, got way too close to my mouth. Holy crap. We're joined by Zariq from Bullyball Media. Zariq, welcome back to the show. I feel like I haven't talked to you maybe since May. I think it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I think we did one right before the season started, if memory serves correct.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, it's been a while though. I haven't done much talking like on camera outside of the video. I did for Bullyball this season, so it's good to get in front and talk again. And also always appreciate you having me on here as well.
I know you did mention Bullyball. I do have all of their social media links down below in the description. If you guys are watching live on YouTube right now, Facebook, Twitter, you can go, support Zar with his YouTube channel and the written work that you guys do. I know I saw that Bullyball video that you watched, and it was like so different and so good at the same time. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. It was something different I wanted to try. I'm working on another one of those right now. It's something that I've always like wanted to do. So just like kind of getting the actual camera and mic and doing it was like the biggest hurdle. And it turned out okay. I definitely think there's some things I learned, and I'll work on for this upcoming one.
I don't know if you can do them outside anymore because it's like dark.
Yeah, no, way too cold. Way too cold.
It's cold and it's snowing here in Michigan right now. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard like a service truck trying to shovel snow on a dirt road, which is hilarious because you can actually hear the rocks ping with the snow blowers. Like, pretty sure my neighbor lost his windshield just from the snow blow. Yeah, we got a guy going down our street. It's like, hey, I'm gonna snow blow, and knowing full well, like, we have rocks on the street, you just hear the rocks pinging everywhere. It's actually hilarious.
That's horrible. I would be so pissed if I found out that's how I lost a windshield.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly kind of funny. We do have a good show for you guys. A couple of topics. I don't think I've actually done a long form podcast like this in probably about a month. It's just been chaotic trying to do post game shows and do a long form podcast.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really chaotic, but it's been fun, covering this team since they have been winning more games as of late. But I wanted to start the show with a rotation question because I feel like that's one question, one topic that when I'm scrolling the timeline, I see a lot of people have very strong opinions about it. So, like, how do the Pistons really get this settled? Because I know JB has said hey, we want to play 12 guys. We'll play the best guys in the second half and kind of give an opportunity for 12, 13 guys in the first half. Like, what's kind of your thought process with this whole rotation?
It's tough because after the win streak, you really realize the depth that this team has. Because a lot of talk was made before the season about just how deep this team is, and some people kind of questioned it, but seeing it come to reality when you have someone like Dennis Jenkins stepping up and becoming a big time player for you, and Javonte Green, who was a pretty quiet signing for the Pistons, really stepping into that role, and I think at times being the second best perimeter defender on this team. I think his presence has been incredible, and I think that's something that with Paul Reed as well, he steps in and he's able to give you energy and offense and defense. It's like you can't really say that there's a weak link on this team. So I understand. I could not put myself in JB's shoes trying to figure out who exactly I can't play any given day, and I realize it's a really difficult decision to make. That being said, since the team's been relatively fully healthy, since Tobias and Ivy have come back, it's been a little bit clunky just with figuring out the rotations. You can tell that there's not a lot of synergy between players that haven't played together yet this season, and it's been kind of, in my opinion, slowing down what made the team really gel throughout that 13-game win streak. And it was, that identity of defense, playing in transition, and then also a lot of great ball movement. I think we've seen turnovers really start to spike in the last 4 games or so. And that wasn't something that I thought was a major issue for the Pistons prior, especially during that win streak. I thought their turnover problem has been an issue for I mean, I don't even know how long, right? Like that's every year we go
Yeah,
on about
last
how
year
the team,
it was a problem.
yeah, has issues with turnovers. But I thought for that 13-game win streak and the beginning of the season, I thought the turnover problem was relatively kind of solved. But we've seen it pick up a little bit more the last 4 games, and I feel like that definitely correlates to the fourth quarter collapses that we've also seen a little bit, and with Cade also having a lot more to do with those turnover problems as well. It's just like there's something out of place with the rotations right now. I know JB is very headstrong on going with this 12-man rotation, and I mean, to his credit, you're not really failing for it. You're 2-2, in the last 4, but I definitely feel like it's a tough decision, and you can't necessarily say, all right, well, this guy, you've played your way out of the rotation. And then also contractually, some guys you're paying, like you don't want them sitting on your bench for the amount of money you're paying them as well. So it's kind of it's a weird situation. I feel like going to a 9 or 10-man rotation at most is the way to go, especially because that's what we've seen breed success with this team and allows them to kind of play together a little more. But yeah.
Yeah, especially during the winning streak, like you're playing 9, 10 guys because you had to because of injuries. Obviously, Tobias missing those 9 games, the ankle injury. Jaden Ivey was still out at the time, and once you got those 2 back, it was just like, okay, Ivy's going to be in a minute restriction. Karis LeVert's been in and out of the lineup. I thought the one thing that I saw, which I just don't think you can do anymore, is I don't think you could play Karis LeVert and Jaden Ivey on the court together. I just don't think it works. I think what you saw last night is have Danis, keep calling him Danis. My bad, Danis. Play Danis at point guard and Ivy at shooting guard, more of his natural position, and it's more free flowing. When you have Karis and Jaden Ivey out there together, it just feels really weird. It feels very clunky. You don't know who's gonna bring the ball up the court. You don't know if Karis is going to just go full ISO mode, because that's kind of been who he is. His whole career is just pound the rock for 12 seconds and try to find a mismatch. And if he can't, he passes it back out. It's just really bad process at times. But I mean, the rotation thing, I can understand. Like, everyone stepped up during that winning streak. You want to give every guy an opportunity. But to your point, like, you don't want to be paying Duncan Robinson all that money and him not starting anymore. You don't want to have Karis, on your bench and you're paying him a full mid-level. Like, it's a tough decision, but I think JB might have to go to maybe a 10, 11 at the most. I think trying to play 12, 13 guys every night is going to be very difficult. Not to mention, just got an update on Marcus Sasser right before we went live on this podcast. So he's going to be rehabbing with the Motor City Cruise to come back. So yeah, another guard that could possibly crack your rotation. I doubt you want to be playing 14 guys every night.
Yeah, no. That's just not generally a formula for success on the NBA level, let alone, honestly, any level. It's so difficult to play that many guys in one given night. I will say on the Karis thing, I think we've seen flashes of what really makes him like a valuable role player in this league. And it's difficult because I think the fit with Ivy is clunky. I think he played well alongside Danis, but Ivy and him are kind of too similar, in my opinion, which makes their synergy a little bit weird. I think he's played decent with Cade, but I do agree. I don't know how many more minutes you want Karis and Ivy sharing together, unless you have like a carved out role where one uses the ball a lot less, and both players kind of play very similar. That I don't know which one you're going to make that sacrifice with.
Yeah, I mean, like, I knew when we signed Karis, it's going to be a way different feel from like a THJ, where it's more of just isolations, getting to the basket, mid range. I'm like, that's his game. And you just mentioned, like, Ivy does like kind of to play the same way. He's more like getting to the basket, can shoot threes if you need him to shoot threes. It's kind of been improved over the last season and a half or so. But I mean, you have to find a way to, just saying, hey, you're going to be facilitating, you're going to be playing off ball, because I feel like they both want to play off ball, and then they're asked to, share, point guard duties, when both of them, to me, aren't really a true, quote unquote point guard, where With Dennis last night, you saw he was looking like he only had 9 points, but he was looking to get the ball out of his hands. Like it didn't stick when he was running the second unit last night.
Yeah, and that made a huge difference, and ultimately gaining a win too. And I think his finishing around the rim, his touch around the rim, is really also something that makes him super valuable, because I feel like he finishes really well around the rim, and you saw that right in the clutch, kind of almost with a game deciding layup over Bam Adebayo. I think Dennis, and I said this on a tweet where some people might have disagreed, but I really do feel like he's earned that spot in the rotation where I don't think he should be playing like 10 or less minutes a game. Like he should be a permanent fixture in this rotation, whatever it may be. I feel like it needs to include Dennis. And honestly, he plays really well next to Cade as a combo guard as well. So I feel like there's so much you can do with Dennis that I would hate to see him, not continue to get minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's proven enough to a point where it's just like he's earned a good 12 to 15 minutes a night just for the play that he's had. 2 weeks ago, even last night, every time he does get minutes, he impacts it. He might not always score, but it's just his presence out there, not being afraid to shoot those buzzer beaters that we've seen. I mean, the buzzer beater against Washington, the force in the overtime, the buzzer beater against Philly at the end of the third quarter. I think the thing with him that I think maybe some fans don't really pay attention to is just he can switch his role on the fly like that. Like if you need him to shoot, he'll shoot. You need him to the cut to the basket, he'll cut to the basket. If you need him to call Cade out, getting blown by Davion Mitchell in the fourth quarter last night, like a two-way guy's calling out your lead guard. Like how many stars would like actually like do that if you're Cade Cunningham? I don't know if you peeped that last night of him like calling Cade out after Davion beat him, and they go in the huddle and like Stu's laughing at him. It's just like, man, like what is that? A two-way guy calling out our star player? Like I just kind of love to come up with him, man, and it's a really cool story this year.
It's what makes him a dog. You know what I mean? Like it's not something. It's not like he's talking out of place either. It was a fair comment. I think he fits in on so many levels with this team. And I feel like if one player really like embodies kind of the transcendence the Pistons have gone through in the last like 2 years, it really would be Dennis. Like a guy who was on a two-way, didn't get much run last year, but then now all of a sudden got a little bit of an opportunity and is just running with it.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he does get a standard contract. Don't know what to do there, whether they just cut Isaac Jones, which I know this is like completely random, but I've never seen someone get a last roster spot and spend more time with the Motor City Cruise than he does with the Detroit Pistons. It is the most wildest thing I've ever seen.
I mean, yeah, if I were to take a guess, I would like to think that Dennis eventually does get converted to that standard contract, and Isaac Jones ends up getting a two-way, specifically just because he spent so much time with the Cruise. We'll see, but I just with the amount of time he spent there, it feels like a logical next step.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you caught that game last night. I've never seen a G League game that had that much scoring and no defense. I think it was like 157 to like 138. Like,
oh my god, yeah, no, I didn't get to catch it. That's insane. I know they were rocking the throwback jerseys.
Yeah, it was throwback night. I think Alavari, is it? He was like, I think he was a guy we picked up. I don't know if he was a two-way at one point.
Quincy Alavari, I think.
Yeah, he went crazy because Jaden Atkins has been kind of like their lead guard, kind of in replacement of Dennis. But Quincy went crazy. He had like 20 points in like the first half, and I was just like, maybe the Pistons found another gem there. I mean, he was just hitting threes, finding Tolu and Isaac Jones. I was like, I got an hour to kill. Pistons don't play till late. Let's see how the Crews are doing, and they were down to the Iowa Wolves, and I was just like, maybe they'll win this one. And I look at the final score after the Pistons game was over. I was like, holy shit. 157.
Wow.
That's insane.
I have covered the G League for years. I don't think I've seen a 150-point game.
No, it's got to be a record.
Yeah.
It's insane. Speaking of records, we do kind of have a list that came out this week, and it was the Ringers list. Now, The Pistons did have 3 individual players make their top 100. Cade Cunningham was 10th. Jalen Duren was 43rd. Asar Thompson came in at 70th. We do have the top 10 that we are going to put on the screen for people watching live. So kind of wanted to just get your takeaway with this top 10 list from the Ringer, top 10 players in the NBA right
now. Well, I feel like it's not even a talking point that Cade Cunningham is a top 10 player in the association right now, just because it's become a national talking point. You know what I mean? It's about where is Cade Cunningham in the MVP race, and I think he's a little bit low in this Ringer list. Because I think this year I would definitely have him over Donovan Mitchell, Stephen Curry, and honestly even Jalen Brunson. Now that top 5, I will admit, like it's a really solid one. I might have him over Victor right now just because Victor spent time out with injury. But obviously, he's going to be inevitably a top 3, top 2, even 1 player in the NBA. But I definitely think Cade has earned his spot as a top 5 player in the NBA right now, not just top 10. And I think when the season is said and done, if he remains healthy and if the Pistons kind of stay on the course that they're on, I think Cade inevitably will be one of the finalists in NBA award season for the most valuable player. You look at the performances he's been putting up, win or lose, it's been honestly some of the best basketball individually I think any Pistons fan has ever seen. I know we talked about Blake Griffin, who holds a special place in my heart personally, got me into this whole media space just because I reinvigorated how I saw Pistons basketball and just the NBA in general. But I think Cade surpassed him at this point. Like he's just moving on a level right now where I feel like if he isn't included in the top 5, top 4 of the MVP discussion by the end of the year, I'd really be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he started the season around 8. Last week on the NBA MVP ladder, he was 5. So he's kind of been in the consistent top 10 of MVP voting. I know he did get a couple of MVP votes last year when the media awards had come out. But I mean, kind of looking at this ranking, I can't really deny the top 4 because all 4 of those guys are just undeniable, stars. I think Luka will win an MVP one day. It's kind of surprising that he hasn't yet.
This might be his year, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, the way he's scoring the basketball and he's actually in shape. I mean, I'm sure Dallas would love him back, but it's probably never going to happen.
Yeah.
I understand the Victor Wembanyama hype. I really do. But I don't know if I would have him as the 5th best player in the NBA. I think he's still in my top 10. I just don't know if he's top 5. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of Piston fandom leaking out, but you could have a debate right now between Anthony Edwards and Cade Cunningham, I think.
I think so, for sure. Yeah.
You just put their stats side by side. Obviously, the Timberwolves have been to back-to-back Western Conference Finals. If you just kind of take that out of the equation, you're just talking about player for player. I honestly think it's pretty damn close. And obviously, I love Anthony Edwards. He's probably my, non-favorite Piston player that, if I see a Wolves game on and I got nothing to do, I'll just turn it on for, an all-time soundbite or a poster dunk. He's just really fun to watch. But yeah, man, I don't know. I'd like to see Cade a little bit higher than 10. I would probably have him maybe at 7, maybe at 6. But I just think sometimes the Victor hype gets a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I mean, understandably so. The beginning of his season this year was unreal.
Yeah.
But not to say he came back down to earth, as in the things he's doing or we're doing were pedestrian, but he definitely leveled out a little bit where it wasn't looking like that Dallas game, every game. But he undoubtedly is a top 10 player in the NBA right now. I do agree. I don't know if he's top 5 at the moment. He could come back from injury and just all of a sudden be, the player that we saw in those first 3 games of the season. But I think there's just a little more growth that needs to happen. Also, just with the Spurs as a whole, he hasn't gotten that many minutes with De'Aaron Fox quite yet. So just building synergy, I think it'll come, but I just feel like it's a little bit soon for Victor to be above Anthony Edwards and Cade Cunningham as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like him as a player. I'm kind of like really crushed that we didn't win the lottery that year because he had Cade and Wimby, man. Like, ESPN would have to be out here like every damn day because
Oh yeah.
you imagine that duo? That would be
Oh my
absolutely massive.
God.
That would be
Yeah, no.
filthy. I mean, there'd be nothing you could do with those two. But I mean, honestly, like my perspective with the Wembanyama stuff is like I think the media is just like trying to push him as like the quote unquote face of the league. Like
For sure.
I was listening to a Kevin O'Connor podcast about 2 weeks ago, and I had to turn it off because not because he doesn't have great podcasts, he does, but his co-host that he had at the time said, "Yeah, like we should be having like 60 Spurs nationally televised games just for Victor."
All right.
I was like, okay, like I get he's there's not a lot of players in the NBA like him, shooting threes, blocking shots. Like I get it, but like I think the hype, just put a fire extinguisher on that hype train a little bit.
Yeah, there's a time and place. Like I think Victor, you can absolutely say like is a one of a kind player in this league, and I think he will be the face of the NBA. But we as a NBA media tend to get a little overexcited with things, and I think that ultimately leads to players like getting hated on and getting a lot of unfair attention and criticism. And I feel like that's unfair to Wemby when we're talking about nationally televising 60 Spurs games when they're not a powerhouse in the West quite yet. Now, do I think they're 100% a playoff team this year? Yes. Do I think they'll probably finish top 5, 6? Yeah, I think so. But they're not in the conference finals or on a finals run just quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, I like him as a prospect. I think sometimes a lot of the times in the media, like you saw it with Ja Morant and Zion, like they were so great in college that the media was just trying to prop them up as like these superstars. And then like both of them, I think, kind of cracked under pressure in different ways.
For sure.
And they haven't really had I think the career that the media wanted them to have. And it's kind of funny because like that was in the golden era of Steph Curry and LeBron James. And obviously like watching those finals, dude, I loved it. I know some people hated it, but I loved watching just that rivalry. But I think sometimes the media doesn't do their themselves any favors when they're trying to kind of prop like face of the league. Like they're still trying to do it, and you still have Kevin Durant, you still have LeBron, you still have Steph Curry still here. You're kind of just like sweeping them under the rug saying, I don't want to play with you anymore. It's like the fucking like Woody like
Yeah, the Toy Story
meme because they're looking at all these young stars right now. It's just like appreciate what you have because when it's gone, you're gonna be crying.
for sure. Yeah, it's I think they do I will say I think the balance right now is decent just because I think Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and of course LeBron get like a whole lot of attention still. And I think all of them deserve even more credit for being as good as they are at these stages in their careers, respectively. But it's hard because I understand, I
Yeah.
completely understand why you look to the young faces of the league as you see, the twilight of these guys' careers, and you're like, what's next? But I think letting these things come naturally is also like a really big deal as well, because when you get so hyper focused on making one guy the face of the league, you might completely miss another story that's unfolding in front of your eyes. Like it took a while for Cade to start getting the attention he is, and now I feel like he's kind of getting one of those types of media pushes as well, where you see him as a talking point on ESPN or like NBC or whatever you name it. He is like always on TV now, and you can definitely tell he's got the push behind him. So there's a lot that comes with it, but I will give them credit for looking to the younger guys now.
I was kind of laughing because I saw my first tweet from a non-Pistons fan, and he was on Cade Cunningham free throw merchant hate watch, and
Really?
I was laughing because I was like Cade gets to the free throw line too much, and I'm like, bro, like this guy barely got to the free throw line. Like you kind of scroll the timeline, and 90% of the time it's Knicks fans, but like the other 10% you see Cavs fans. Like it's a weird territory to be in right now
For
because
sure.
during that losing streak, like they felt bad, when the Pistons were at the bottom, as soon as they have a little bit of success, they're on hate watch. Like the switch up is crazy.
I mean, it makes sense, especially for the Knicks, like playing against a team in the playoff series. Both are extremely passionate fan bases. Like, I feel like these were two teams with fans that were kind of meant to hate each other. Because I will say, every day on Twitter, I see like a new level of vitriol between these two fan bases, and it's kind of fun to watch. I can't lie.
Yeah, I mean the timeline, not even on Pistons Twitter, but just like NBA Twitter, like seeing the amount of people during the winning streak, people were trying to see if the Pistons were going to like lose that game. And it seems like, oh, you guys have an easy schedule. Look who they're playing tonight. But I mean, it's been really funny just to watch like other NBA fans interact with Pistons fans or just Pistons media members. Like I saw Amari just put like a troll in his place the other day, and I was dying. This is funny stuff. I did kind of want to transition into some things I heard over on the Hoop Collective podcast from Vinny Goodwill. So one of the first things he said that really caught my attention was ownership, saying that ownership might be willing to, have an appetite to make a big move. Like when you heard that, like what did you think by that? Because I've seen a lot of different people have different opinions on what they thought that meant.
I think it's just kind of signaling that it's tough because there's a thing of for 2000, like let's say 19 up until last year, I think there was a lot of kind of PTSD around the Blake Griffin trade and the effects that had, and that was really like the first big swing the Pistons made since, I guess you could say, like the Chauncey Allen Iverson trade, if you're not including like the free agency signings with Ben Gordon, Charlie Villanueva, Josh Smith as well. But I would say, like in terms of big swing trades, like that was the first one, and it really like a decade at that time that the Pistons had made, and people have their opinions on it. I still think overall, if you gave me the option to do that trade again, I would do it still, just because I think Blake Griffin really brought that team a level of individual performance that most Pistons fans, especially my age at that point, hadn't seen. And I think that really changed things for the Pistons in one way or another, because also, if you remember around that time, ownership was not willing to go into a full rebuild. It was constantly retooling, kind of like the Sacramento Kings currently are. And they wouldn't fully embrace a rebuild. And that Blake Griffin trade ultimately brought you Cade Cunningham, and now at the point where you are an Eastern Conference contender once again. And I think now you're at this kind of nexus point where you're a very good team in the Eastern Conference, and you're led by Cade, and you have a strong identity, and I think you know what your core is. It's really just the question of, do you continue to bet on internal development? And I'm not saying, like make no moves, but maybe make a smaller, kind of similar to the Dennis Schroeder deal last year type of move, or do you go and look at, obviously, like there's no way around the elephant in the room, look at like a Lauri Markkanen, maybe a Trey Murphy in New Orleans, like look at those kinds of players and see if that really raises your ceiling to not just being a team that gets out of the second round, but a team that ultimately can contend for the NBA championship this year, a team that can get out of the Eastern Conference. And I think that's a decision that Trajan Langdon really has to think about for the next like month or two, about just where exactly the direction of this team is going. And if you really do believe this team has a shot to make the finals this year, in which, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's that out of the question to say the Detroit Pistons have a legitimate shot to get out of the East this year. They've been one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and the Eastern Conference also, I would like to say, is not as bad or nearly actually even bad at all. Like many people were saying it would be. It's a pretty decently strong Eastern Conference, but it's also an Eastern Conference where I don't really see the Pistons having many teams that really are undoubtedly better than them, or a team that I think they can't match up with in a playoff series. I think pretty much every team in the Eastern Conference, the Pistons can see in a playoff series. And I think that really makes them dangerous to get out of the Eastern Conference. And I think part of that is, maybe adding a secondary scoring punch, whether that be a large swing or a marginal one. I do think that is a need on this team for sure, is adding that secondary scorer. Because you look at the box score any given night where Cade's playing, and it's usually Cade with a large sum, and then it's by committee throughout. Duran, I think, has been incredible this year. I think he's stepped up in a huge way, but Jalen Duran isn't like, a initiator of offense. Like he's able to get drives and create a lot more offense than he used to. But you look at, Shea and J-Dub, right? Like how they can kind of go, it's either one on any given night, just creating so much offense. And I think if anybody comes into town, I think whoever that is you would have to buy into them, complementing not only Cade's game, but Duran's game, Asar, Stu, etc. I think like, exactly what your core is, and whoever you go out and decide you want to get has to kind of not only buy into the culture, but also fit the play styles of the guys you already have.
I do want to say, I think the main difference between, like, if we kind of look back to trading from Blake and this current iteration, is the Pistons have a star player that they're trying to build around, where when they traded for Blake, they didn't really have a star player. Like, they were trying to build around Andre Drummond, and they tried to do the too big thing with Greg Monroe and Andre Drummond. They obviously knew that they needed someone that could stretch the floor, and they traded for Blake. And that was some of probably just that one season individually, probably some of the best basketball I've seen from a player in Blake Griffin. And we appreciate him on this podcast. Shout out to Blake. But the way when I was listening to this podcast and the way, it was worded, makes me think that Tom would be willing to go for a move if Trajan is wanting to go for a move. It doesn't really feel like he's tapping Trajan on the shoulder saying, hey, so-and-so's available, let's go trade for him, because he has that star in Cade Cunningham right now. And he has probably the most young talent that he's ever had since purchasing the team. Because if you remember when he purchased the team, he purchased him during the dark years when everyone was gone, and you kind of had to grow with a Brandon Knight, grow with all of those guys. So, I mean, he hasn't had that many top 5 picks in the building. So that's the way I took it. I don't know, like, if you listened to that or just read the transcripts, how you kind of took that quote.
No, I definitely took it a similar way. I don't think it's Tom saying, like, let's go and make this move right now. I think I brought up the Blake trade just as a way of saying, like, they no longer are completely against it. Because I think they were for a second there. I think they were completely against the idea of going out and making a big swing. But I think enough time has passed now where there is some level of interest and acceptance and whatever that might be. And that ultimately comes with trust with Trajan Langdon and the front office, and also just with the direction of the team as a whole. And I mentioned the Blake trade also earlier, as I saw someone commented that it did not have anything to do with the Pistons bringing in Cade. And I would disagree. I think that move indirectly brought you Cade Cunningham, because if you don't go out and make that big swing, Tom doesn't really have to take a look in the mirror and accept defeat, with the Andre Drummond era in Detroit. And I think that ultimately led them to this current rebuild that we're on. But regardless, I think this is like a turning point where ownership is now showing that they're willing to make a similar move. Not saying it'll have the effect of the Blake Griffin trade, but they're willing to make that big swing. And I think also it goes to show that they're willing to spend on this team as well, because a lot of times with teams that are trying to compete, a big issue is ownership not willing to spend. You look at Indiana, and the amount of times they've struggled with, kind of keeping in line with the salary cap. I think Tom Gores is an owner that is willing to spend, and especially if he believes in the team. I think this is really going to show, like, he truly does believe in this team, and he's willing to put his name on it.
I see a lot of Pistons fans in the comments right now discussing the Blake trade. Here's the thing. If Stan Van Gundy drafted better, it probably, like, the Blake era would have panned out more. I mean, he even said, like, if I would have drafted Devin Booker, I'd probably still be in Detroit. He said that on Zach Lowe's podcast the other day. Like, his biggest failure as an executive was drafting. Now, him going and trading for Blake Griffin, the process of the trade I thought was good because you got a guy under contract that's all NBA, can stretch out the floor. You're not relying on Andre Drummond to be your number one option. Reggie Jackson was more of a complimentary piece. You didn't need Reggie Jackson to take 20 shots a night. The problem with that team is they were hard capped in the salary cap, so they really couldn't make a whole lot of moves. And the issue with that was you had guys that wanted to leave in free agency in KCP that didn't want to stay here, even though you did offer him a 5-year contract. In retrospect, it was probably better that he didn't accept that 5-year contract, because I don't think he'd be the NBA champion that he is today. He wouldn't have those championship rings with Denver and LA, but I don't really think the process with the Blake Griffin trade was bad. I think if you don't make that trade, to your point, you don't have Cade Cunningham, because you would still have a core nucleus of a young Tobias Harris. You would still have Reggie Jackson. Maybe you still have Avery Bradley, even though he kind of got injured that year. But, I mean, if you kind of just, like, go down the rabbit hole and contextualize the trades that you did make, the Pistons were bad enough where they had to do just a flat rebuild where they didn't have any assets. You drafted Killian Hayes, and Killian Hayes got you Cade Cunningham. So, I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Didn't know I had to do a Killian Hayes, a little topic on the podcast, even though I see people on the timeline post his G League stats every time he posts 40, which is just mind-boggling to me. I was like, let it go, you guys. Let it go. Let him do his thing in Cleveland.
Yeah, it's he's always going to be in the hearts and minds of Pistons fans one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, I sold my stock as soon as a reporter told me that Troy told him, "Hey, work on your game," and he's like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And he never did. I was like, "Okay, sell my stock. I'm good. I know some of the big names you had mentioned. One of them, Lauri Markkanen. But it's kind of just like landscaping some of the big names that have been mentioned: Lauri Markkanen, Anthony Davis, Jaren Jackson. Do you think any of these names make sense at all for the Detroit Pistons right now? I know each player would probably have their different asking prices, but I mean, these are the kind of the names that I've seen floated out by Pistons fans over the last couple of months.
I'm going to completely ignore, like, just the trade itself, like what it would cost and who would be involved, etc., and just talk about fit. And I think Lauri Markkanen is, and it's a controversial topic at this current moment, and some people are inevitably going to be upset at this, but I think Lauri Markkanen is, like, he fits like a glove on this team. Obviously, the identity of this team is defense, et cetera, et cetera. But a big hole in this team currently is a secondary creator outside of Cade Cunningham that can put up volume scoring. Lauri Markkanen not only can do that, but he also provides size as a power forward who can give you, honestly, this season 40 on any given night, right? Like, there's nights where, and Cade Cunningham himself talked about this on the Kevin Durant podcast, right, where he was saying how he doesn't always want to be the one initiating the offense, right? Like, he doesn't always want to be the one, starting everything and constantly having the ball in his hands, and how he wants to play more off ball. And that was in conversation about playing next to another guard, but I think that could also be applied to just having another volume scorer on this team, because Lauri can score on any given level, and I think that also opens up things for Cade. I think that opens up things for Asar. I think him and Duran would play extremely well together offensively as well. And that's also why you still have Asar on this team. And no, I don't think he would be part of that trade, obviously. I think that's why you have Isaiah Stewart. Like, they're inevitably will be times if Lauri Markkanen were to get traded here where I think all three of them could probably share the court together, like JB rolled out in Cleveland prior, with Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Lauri Markkanen. And I think it would actually work, especially because at this stage, Isaiah Stewart can stretch the floor a lot more than Jared Allen or Evan Mobley could at that point. Now, both of them have expanded their game since then, but, that's neither here nor there. I think you look at Lauri, and I think he's just such a seamless fit. And I don't think he's as bad of a defender as people make him out to be, as like a counter argument to why he shouldn't be on this team. I just feel like it makes so much sense. Now, if you want to talk about contract and how he's getting paid over the next 4 years, that's a completely valid criticism. I think that's completely fair. But if you have an owner that's willing to spend, I honestly, I don't see many reasons why not to, if it's completely outside of just like the cost of Lauri Markkanen. That's a completely different conversation. But if you're talking about fit, when you're talking about fit, I don't see how Lauri wouldn't fit, and I don't see how he doesn't raise the Pistons ceiling pretty significantly. Honestly, I think it'd be similar to that 2023. Was it 2023-24 where Indiana traded for Pascal?
I would say, like, out of all three of these guys in the lower third, I think two of these guys fit. I don't really like the fit with Jaren Jackson Jr.
Agreed.
Just for like the rebounding for his size, like your starting point guard on the Pistons shouldn't be averaging more rebounds than Jaren Jackson Jr. I talked to a Memphis Grizzlies podcaster, and I was under the assumption they loved him down there. They don't. They don't like how soft he plays. They don't like how he's passive at times. I saw a lot of people kind of bring him up because of the Michigan State connection. And obviously, he's a hell of a player, was a really high pick. But I don't really think Jaren Jackson would make a whole lot of sense for Detroit. I do think from a stylistic standpoint, Lauri makes a whole lot of sense. We obviously know what the cost is. Danny said like it would start at a SAR, which
it's not going to end up being a SAR.
Yeah. No, I'm sure the Pistons probably laughed and hung up the phone saying, good talking to you, Danny. Like, maybe call you in another month, see where your asking price is at. But I think from just the style standpoint, having a stretch forward like Lauri makes a whole lot of sense. I also think, for what it's worth, even though Anthony Davis has had his injuries, he does make a whole lot of sense for the Pistons as well. Obviously, he's not the three-point sniper that Lauri is, but he can still stretch the floor, protect the rim, mid-range. I mean, the one game I went to the Palace before it got demolished was the 59 against the Pistons, and Anthony Davis went crazy on Anthony Tolliver and Andre Drummond in that game. I know that was a long time ago when he was with the Pelicans, but I mean, like, he's always been a player that I've really, respected and admired. But like, all of these guys are in big contracts. All of these guys are making $50 million. I mean, I think Anthony Davis is close to making, 54, 58, then 60 the final 3 years of his deal. But I think he would actually probably be the cheapest to get right now because it's damaged goods. And I think Dallas, they're not actively saying it, but I think they want to rebuild around Cooper Flag and kind of start like a soft tool rebuild personally.
Yeah, and that is one thing I would like to see. Anthony Davis, and I've gone on record saying this on Twitter a few times. I do think he would be a great fit on this team. The biggest question, obviously, is health. And I think the thing that reasonably scares people away, and understandably so, is the fact that he'll be under contract for the next, 2 years? Is he on under contract for 3 years? Yeah. 3 years. And Anthony Davis is already in his 30s. So, you don't know what that looks like in 2-3 years. With that being said, if you are a Lauri detractor, and you talk about how the identity of this team is defense, and how Lauri doesn't fit that, Anthony Davis does. I mean, and I think he's gone through a lot of disrespect since the Luka Doncic trade, where people have kind of discarded him, and like you said, his damaged goods because of not being able to be on the court as often. I think the perception of him around the league is at the lowest it's ever been, and this is someone who was considered a top 75 player of all time, right? Like, And Anthony Davis is legitimately going straight to the Hall of Fame as soon as he retires. I think he still can contribute at a very high level right now. Like, it wasn't that long ago in Los Angeles where he was contributing at a very high level. And that Lakers team prior to the Luka trade last year was actually on a bit of a roll. So I really struggle to understand why people don't think Anthony Davis worked. Now, I understand the injury part of it, but if he is on the court, I think it's a no-brainer as to why it would work. I think he could also play alongside Jalen Duren because he never wants to play the center position. And if you think about it, in extended minutes, he really hasn't like played alongside a center. I know he does in Dallas currently, but it's not really the ideal situation for him. Not a great fit. But playing it next to a center like Jalen Duren, you think of that bubble Lakers team where JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard completely raised the ceiling of that team just by being able to provide an extra large body that can attack the boards and protect the rim next to Anthony Davis. I think that like is a seamless fit. I think the only thing for me that would be a detractor to making that trade would be ultimately the contract, but I think the cost would be very low. I can't see him costing more than maybe possibly one in a swap. And I legitimately think like Anthony Davis of all three would be the low cost, high reward kind of option. And I think that's worth exploring. Now, do I think he is the number one on the list of Pistons targets? Probably not. No. But do I think he could work out here? And do I think if he's healthy, could bring this team to a finals level team? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the cost is low. I mean, I don't know if you're allowed to trade front office executives, but I mean, just throw Dennis Lindsey in there and maybe it's a fair trade so he can take over the Mavs front office. Mavs fans, I don't know if you've seen it. Like, there's a couple of Mavs accounts that have a pretty big following, and they're like, yeah, Dennis Lindsey turned the Pistons around. Like, they completely ignore that like Trajan has been here and kind of added on the margins. Like, yeah, Dennis drafted all those players. Like, okay, if you really want to believe that, like, here, give us AD, we'll give you Dennis Lindsey.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to add just to the AD thing was just like, imagine teams trying to score on Asar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, and Anthony Davis in the same lineup. Like that is a nightmare defensively, and I think that would be the thing that makes this Pistons team come out of the Eastern Conference if a trade were to be that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Pistons will make a move. I know a lot of the names that have been just disgruntled stars. Obviously, you're not trading for John Moran or LaMelo Ball. You got your point guard, but you do kind of see front court players. And I feel like we've been talking about like stretch fours and power forwards for the past 2 years, even though Tobias Harris absolutely just lit it up last night. Only missed 2 shots. I mean, he was just in his bag against the Miami Heat last night. I had to remember who the hell did we play because the game was so chaotic that it just wiped my memory because I just had so many chest pains in the fourth quarter. I swear, man, this team sometimes, I mean, it's like, oh, you're up 20. I was like, oh, yeah, like my buddy's just like, they're up 20. I'm going to go to bed. I'm like, you do that. Get a text this morning. How is this a 3-point game?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, fourth quarter collapse.
I had a tweet like in the drafts ready to go with like 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter yesterday. And I was like, okay, once we get to like the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to fire this off early because it's looking like a blowout. And all of a sudden it was an insane Miami run. And at one point there was a one possession game. And if they had called Cade for a foul on Norman Powell, that might have been a 1-point game. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just such a crazy game. Like the past 2 games, I'm like, are they going to close it out? Or are they going to turn the ball over? Like when Orlando was up 12, I was like, I think the game's over. Then they go on a 10-0 run and tie it. I was like, dude, what the hell is with this team? Like, just give me palpitations. I was just like, I gotta watch this game on mute. I can't hear the announcer saying, "Well, their streak's over," and then like they tie the game. It's just like, man, like, relax, relax.
It's like when you get bored on 2K and it's getting too easy, so you let the person come back a little bit, and then all of a sudden they actually have a chance to win the game, and you've got it's like the sitting up in the chair kind of meme.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's definitely the 2K. Like, you're not trying, and then you decide to actually try, um, which is like an all-time meme. There's a couple more kind of notes from that Hoop Collective podcast. One name, obviously, he's not really linked to the Pistons, but I know Vinny did mention him, is Coby White. Do you think that could kind of be like an under the radar name this trade deadline? It might not just be for the Pistons, but just in general. I feel like, once they traded Zach LaVine, he started putting it all together. But they have Josh Giddey now, Ayo DeSumo. They have a couple of guards in the rotation. It feels like they might want to trade one of them.
Yeah, I think Coby White is an interesting one, also just because he's heading into a contract year now. But Coby's someone who on any given night, can put up 20 points per game. Currently, I had to look it up. He's averaging 24 points. I know a limited sample size, but 24 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting 44% from the field, 34% from 3. He's a volume scorer that I think if you were the Pistons, does make sense, right? Like, I know a lot of people would make the Ivy comparison, and fair enough, but I just feel like he's someone who has throughout his career kind of shown the ability to be a bucket. He's never going to be a number one option on a team, but do I think he really could complement a number one option? Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to see Coby White in a winning situation, whether that be in Detroit, where actually I do think he would be a great fit, or somewhere else. I think Coby White 100% is a name to look out for on the trade market. The only reason I would say maybe not is just because of the resistance Chicago has shown to making in-season trades, and also just making any type of transaction in general. They have a bit of hesitancy to do, but I feel like, with no contract extension and heading into a free agency, I feel like maybe Chicago will try to get him on the move for something, but we'll see. They're kind of in a weird spot also in the Eastern Conference right now, where they're good enough to have a shot at the playoffs, but they're not bad enough to really be in that rebuilding phase where, Josh Giddey's playing, out of his mind this season, and the team as a whole is kind of gelling together. I think Matas looks incredible. And I think he's got such a high ceiling as well. So I think it'll be interesting. I think 100%, if I were to say if he's a fit or not on Detroit, 1,000% he's a fit. And I think he definitely elevates the ceiling of this team.
I mean, they're currently sitting at the 10th seed. I mean, that is such a Chicago Bulls thing to do, is kind of flirt in between that 9 and 10 seed. I think the reason why I found that interesting is, like, Josh Giddey is ahead of the snake. Trey Jones had started in Coby White's place. And he's kind of an under the radar. You still have DeSumo, who's a really good on-ball defender. And not to mention, like, the contract that he's on, I think is like great. And I know the Pistons do have a lot of guards, but to me with him, it's like, if you want to bring him in as a sixth man, it makes a whole lot of sense, because I've seen this guy firsthand, take over games in a quarter just with his scoring. Like, whether it's, 3-point shooting, getting to the basket, getting to the free throw line, like, he would add a whole other dynamic that I think this team's missing right now. And it's, a 3-level scorer and consistent 3-point shooting. Like, obviously we have Duncan Robinson, and he's getting his good, like, 10 to 12 3-point attempts a night, but this isn't the same team it was last season in terms of just 3-point volume. You don't have Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway accounting for 40% of your 3-point makes. It's solely on, Duncan Robinson. Cade is taking a little bit more. Tobias is taking more. I still think, like, if you're looking for improvements, I think 3-point shooting should be something that Trajan and the Pistons look at. I think Coby would make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, we're just talking about how, the offense really has been struggling outside of Cade, and you look at someone who probably would not cost anywhere near what Lauri Markkanen costs, unless AK in Chicago's office has all of a sudden just raised the Coby stocks out of the roof. I think he's going to cost less than any of the names we previously mentioned, and might have honestly similar offensive impact. I think Coby's a really underrated player in the NBA in general. Obviously, right now he's dealing with some injury management, but I would think he's a great fit on this Pistons team. Now, can I say he's a championship level raiser in the way that Lauri Markkanen or Anthony Davis are? I don't know. It would remain to be seen, just because, we really haven't seen him be a second, third option on a really good team at any point in his career. And when Chicago was really good, it was primarily Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan that were getting things going. And then you still had Lonzo Ball there as well. So it's just interesting. I would definitely love to see his fit in Detroit. And if not, you look at, maybe Los Angeles, if that'd be something that's interesting, if the Clippers are getting a little desperate, because I think the one thing about this Chicago team that is kind of interesting with the trades they've made thus far, is that they don't value first round compensation really much at all, which is super interesting building a team in today's NBA. But it's just like that's what kind of makes the Coby White trade interesting as well, because I don't know what first round compensation that would cost, if any. In a normal front office, I think Coby White would go for 1 to 2 picks at least. But who knows? It seems like Chicago really values players over picks. So if that's something they're looking for, Detroit might be able to, and his contract's not too large where it would have to be super sacrificial. I don't know honestly what Coby would cost. Now that I'm talking about it, no clue at all, because that Chicago front office is just so unpredictable.
Yeah, I know, like he had mentioned, it doesn't mean that the Pistons are looking to, go out and acquire Coby White. I see a lot of people talking like, what does that mean for Ivy? What does that mean for Dennis Jenkins, Marcus Sasser? Well, it probably means one of those guys is involved in some sort of trade. I mean, you're not going to keep 6 guards on your team. I just think in his career so far, he's been more of a proven commodity than some players that we do have in the roster. And that's no slight at them. Obviously, it's been rotations, it's been injuries. He's just shown that if you give him more opportunity, especially when they traded LaVine, I mean, he popped the hell off. And I was like, oh, maybe they have their guard of the future. And then they get, Getty. And then it's been just like a really weird, wonky roster. Like even like Kevin Huerter is another guy that like maybe kind of like under the radar guy. He's a 3-point shooter. Maybe they try to look to trade for him. I know I had talked to a ESPN Chicago podcaster, and he's like, yeah, the Bulls are looking to get 2 firsts for Kevin Huerter. I was like, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with
That's
that.
what I mean. You never know what to expect from that Chicago front office.
Yeah, I mean, shit, man. I would not even like kind of like thinking about like Chicago, but I would call Sacramento, see what they want for Keon Ellis. I mean, he's not getting any minutes either.
Yeah, that's someone I've been calling for the Pistons to trade for like the last like 2-3 years at this point. I think Keon Ellis would be a seamless fit on this team. It's just the only thing that makes it kind of difficult is just the fact that he's not a volume scorer. He would give a lot, in terms of defense and being a 3-and-D guard, but just kind of where the Pistons are lacking in terms of volume scoring, I feel like he might not be able to help out.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's just, I think a lot of people in the Pistons space are just looking for that number 2 option. And it's just like, it's easier said than done. Like on paper, a lot of guys make sense, but we really don't know how they would fit together until they're like on the actual court.
True.
But I mean, I know they'll either eventually trade for number 2 option or last topic of the podcast. They had kind of talked about how they want to see this core marinate and play together. Are you under that opinion that they should just kind of play it out and see how this core does develop, or are you more under the impression that like with the East kind of being where it's at, maybe it's a good time to try to make more of an upgrade to the roster to get Cade some help? Because you look at these box scores, the guy's almost playing 40 minutes a night.
Yeah, and it's a really high scoring volume and responsibility that he has at the moment as well. That I feel like it depends. Honestly, this whole question depends on what you view their core as, right? Because their core isn't obviously the entire team. To me, I look at the core and I see Cade, obviously. I see Jalen Duren, of course, Asar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, and then I would put Ron Holland in that mix. I think Jaden Ivey is obviously an important piece for the Pistons, but there's so much that remains to be seen with him, especially given his contract status as well, that I don't know if you would say like he is a fixture in the core of this team at the moment, especially because he hasn't, and it's not to any fault of his own, but he hasn't played with this team, much at all last year. And then now coming into this season, he's just, starting to get on the court. I think that ultimately, like changes what you view their core at. Like if you view their core as, what I had previously labeled, then I mean, I don't know what more you really need to see, like I think, what would complement their game. But if you're including Ivy in that and you want to see Cade and Ivy play more together, I think that's completely understandable. They haven't played much together at all. In the minutes they've played together so far this season, I think Ivy's still getting his feet under him. So it's kind of hard to evaluate really where he's at. But I think it's a thing of you are the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, right?
Yeah.
And we are 20 games into the season, so we're not at the midway point, but we're starting to make a little bit of a dent into the season, and you're seeing that you're at the top of your conference, and you can also see kind of what the weaknesses are in your team as well. How you choose to aid those weaknesses ultimately, I think, changes the trajectory of this team. I think, staying at 1-2 is obviously ideal. But if you want to stay there throughout the course of the season, you have to kind of supplement Cade scoring in some way. Now, could that be Jaden Ivey getting his feet under him and playing to the level of, that 5-game stretch that we saw prior to his injury last year? 100%. That's a possibility. But could that also be going out and bringing in a Lauri Markkanen or bringing in Trey Murphy or, someone like that, a Coby White, that we just mentioned. I think that's also very much a possibility. I think it's a thing that you definitely want to keep an eye on, but I don't know. You don't want to run Cade to the ground, like you don't want his tires to just keep spinning on this type of load throughout the season, because you need him healthy for the playoffs. And especially if your plan is to roll with the same team, keep it going. He's going to be your number one option in the playoffs regardless. Right. But especially if you don't make any move and, the Pistons stay exactly where they are, he's going to be pretty much the primary reason that you score, right? And you have your offense going in a playoff setting, and he's going to get targeted a lot. So that's also a thing that you have to look at in terms of, do you make a trade or not? Is because is this offense able to sustain Cade getting doubled and passing out and looking for guys to score outside of him? Because the 3-point shooting right now is also a really big struggle. You don't have Tim Hardaway and Malik Beasley. You have Duncan Robinson, which is great. And you've seen some really good minutes from Chaz Lanier, but he's not a permanent fixture in this rotation either. So, it's just kind of figuring out what exactly makes this team that championship level contender, because I think that's ultimately the discussion that needs to be had right now. And that's where the team kind of has to have these internal dialogues about is what brings us to the NBA finals, because that's the kind of trajectory that they're heading towards in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, like I can understand if Trajan wants to just play it safe and have internal development. I could 100% respect that because he hasn't drafted these guys. There's contract negotiations that will probably be ongoing this summer if you don't move either Duran or Ivy, which I don't really think they're going to move Duran, but I feel like Ivy is the one player that a lot of people bring up, and I can understand it from a contract standpoint. But I think the talent is just it's there. It's just we haven't seen it consistently, whether that's due to injuries or due to former coaches not playing him. But I mean, I think what you said is really important about Cade because like he's playing 38, 40 minutes a night, shooting probably more than he wants to. The number two option, it might get annoying to Pistons fans, but when you get into playoff series, you're going to need another player to, take over games. Like someone had mentioned Jalen Williams in the chat. And, we had a 40-point outburst during the NBA Finals, and he was always in question. Could he be the number two option? OKC kind of had a patient approach, and he developed into a number two option, but their number two option hasn't played this year. And OKC's out to a 17-1 start, but that says more about their depth and their coaching and the draft picks that they found in the draft and finding late round gems like a AJ Mitchell in the second round. But I mean, I think the Pistons approach, they can go in a lot of different ways. It just depends how they want to build long term or if they want to build in the short term. I'd like to think that they want to build in a long-term success, but if you can upgrade marginally, I think Trajan has shown that he likes to do that, especially, adding Dennis Schroeder last year, which was a very marginal move. It was a big move, kind of given like the backup point guard market at the time, because he was probably the best backup point guard you could get, and you got him for basically a second round pick. So I think this team has different needs this year than it did last year. Last year was backup point guard. This year, I think it's more consistent 3-point shooting, because I don't really think that if you go into a playoff series, Duncan Robinson will be getting run off the 3-point line. Teams will be blitzing Cade Cunningham if you get into a playoff series. So trying to find that number two option as the season goes on, whether it's, Asar taking a leap, Tobias being a steady veteran that he is, or Jaden Ivey, once his minute restriction gets lifted and he gets a little bit more consistent minutes, maybe he can take that second option. I think those are just all storylines that we'd be paying attention to, and that's why so many people have just kind of just hammered of trying to find a number two next to Cade, because right now, the way he's playing, come playoff time, the guy's going to be gassed.
Yeah, I mean, it worked to an extent last year where Malik Beasley was that kind of volume 3-point shooter where he had one of the greatest 3-point shooting seasons of all time. And then Tobias was fully healthy throughout the season. I thought he played incredible in that Knicks series as well. But when you look at this team's, roster construction, it's not necessarily one for one like how it was last year. And I think inevitably there will have to be some kind of move that gets made that not necessarily even for the sake of the regular season, but for the playoffs themselves, that makes it easier for this team to kind of get into a rhythm offensively. And I think that's like the biggest thing. Obviously, defense isn't really much of a question on this team as to what effort they'll give and what that identity looks like, especially even in a playoff series. But I feel like that scoring is a big question mark. And like you said, Duncan Robinson is going to 100% get targeted because everybody knows that is the Pistons. Like, honestly, like that is the majority of their 3-point volume comes from Duncan, right? Or just his gravity alone, like brings a lot of attention. So I feel like, let's say you don't go out and make that big swing. What does Coby White cost? Does his 3-point shooting and scoring alleviate that pressure off of Cade and Duncan? I think yes. Like you look at moves like that, or you look at someone like maybe even kind of on the Dennis Schroeder kind of level, where the Pistons were able to go out and acquire him last year for relatively cheap. I don't think he'll be as cheap as Dennis Schroeder, but in terms of name value and not necessarily really being that big swing, but like maybe like a Royce O'Neal in Phoenix, like somebody like that, somebody who kind of knows their role, and is able to kind of fill a hole that the Pistons have.
I just looked up a player, and I know this player got in a fight with Ron Holland last year, but I've always liked this game. If things go south in Minnesota, I wouldn't be opposed to trading for Dante DiVincenzo.
Yeah, it's funny because there's obviously bad blood there. I don't know to what extent, if any of that carried over, or if that was just a specific instance with one game. But yeah, Dante would be a great on the court fit in Detroit, and I don't even know if it would mean things went wrong in Minnesota. It could just be collateral in a sorry, excuse me, in a move where Minnesota goes out and gets that, big level point guard that they're obviously looking for. Like Detroit could find themselves as again like a third team in another deal where they get a high level player for relatively cheap, just because contracts need to get moved.
Yeah, someone had mentioned Grayson Allen, Jay Hart. He likes DiVincenzo and Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen definitely fits into that bad boy mold. Like I could definitely see like Stu and him being best friends, like 100%, just causing chaos on the court, like hiding behind Stu if he did something that he probably should know.
Yeah, Grayson Allen even kind of has the look of a little tiny Bill Laimbeer. So yeah, I could so see that becoming a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just a situation where I think that they'll be looking at 3-point shooting, especially this deadline. But it'll be interesting to see. I don't think I've talked about this much trade talk for a team that's number 1 in the East. I don't think I talked about this much trade talk when they were on a losing streak. But I think it kind of just goes to show you like the dynamic shift with this team, and like I think a lot of Pistons fans want them to continue to keep winning games, obviously, possibly have home court advantage, which would be such a wild turnaround from not making the playoffs to having home court in the first round. But hey, man, it's good times over here.
For sure.
I do know you said you had to get out of here by a certain time, so I tried to, cut the podcast a little short, but I do want to give you the floor to plug and promote Bullyball and all the other stuff that you do. I know you take some really good pictures during the game, hear you during the media sessions from time to time. So
appreciate that. Yeah. Well, yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Zariq Xavier. And then you could find Bullyball at Real Bullyball on any given social media platform. We just put out a Jalen Duren podcast written by Bryce Hollins, or podcast, the Jalen Duren article written by Bryce Hollins earlier this week, and then put together like a cool little picture slideshow kind of thing for it as well that we put out on socials as well. So he's been putting out really good writing content for us, which helps for me because I'm kind of juggling a lot of different things with Bullyball in terms of, obviously, like you said, like the photo content, and then writing and doing video content for my own stuff that I contribute to Bullyball. And then on top of that, just kind of running helping with social media, etc. So he's been such a huge ad for us. And I think his articles have been really incredible. So please do check them out. It's www.bullyball.net. It's pretty easy to find from there. Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. Oh, and then look for me at Pistons games. If you see me, say what's up. I'm usually taking photos, and then like you said, been asking some more questions in the media room this year, and hopefully implementing that into some of the videos I have coming up. So
yeah. I mean, the last picture I saw, but I haven't really been on Twitter that much. That picture you got Apollo, bro. That shit was that was comical. If you guys go follow Zara on Twitter right now, he got a picture of Apollo when Cade hit I think it was like a really late fourth quarter shot when we beat Orlando the first time really early on in the season. Apollo looked like he wanted to cry. Like
yeah, and the funniest part of it is like I didn't really pay attention to Paulo at all until after I had posted that, and everyone was kind of saying how funny he looked. It's impossible to unsee now.
Yeah, it's like he's got his hands on his head and it's just like
eyes closed. Yeah,
it's like it's just like if you could caption that, it'd probably be like, "Come on, bro."
Yeah.
But we do have all your social media links down below. We got bullyball.net, Bullyball YouTube. which was actually really difficult to find. I actually had to scroll through your Twitter because a lot of people have the Bullyball name on YouTube.
There's been more that have popped up throughout the years since we started. It's really annoying. So that's why we also have to get more views and likes on YouTube as well, just so we get pushed up in that algorithm a little more.
Yeah, we need a Bullyball podcast.
Yeah, eventually we'll that's something I wanna get going. I have a idea for that I still am trying to like think of, but we'll keep that under wraps for now.
All right, you guys. We will see you tomorrow immediately after the Pistons and the Atlanta Hawks on our post-game show. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. You don't get sick of seeing my ugly face every day. Peace.